She thought it was just a blind date until the man walked in wearing worn shoes, holding hands with two children. He looked broke, tired, completely ordinary. She almost walked out, not knowing the man in front of her was one of the richest CEOs in the state, quietly testing if she would care when he had nothing to offer. But what she did next, without knowing who he was, shocked him to his core and changed the future of his entire family. She thought it was a normal blind date. But when the man walked in, dressed like he barely had gas money and holding the hands of two tiny children, she almost stood up and left. She had no idea he was testing her, and even less idea he was one of the wealthiest CEOs in the entire state. It was raining outside when Hannah stared down at her watch for the fifth time, 6:42 p.m. He was late. She sat at a small diner her friend had chosen, nothing fancy, just a cozy family place with a broken jukebox and checkered floor. It was supposed to be low pressure, but Hannah had already taken off early from work, done her makeup twice, and skipped her last client for this. The only thing she knew about the guy was his name, Marcus, and that he was sweet and humble and not like other men. But when the diner bell rang and a man walked in wearing an old hoodie, carrying two children, twins, Hannah's jaw clenched. He looked around, his eyes searching, until they landed on her. "Hi, you must be Hannah," he said, smiling. "I'm Marcus. I'm really sorry, my sitter canceled last minute. These two are Maya and Micah." The twins giggled and waved. "Hi!" Hannah blinked. Her face stayed polite, but inside, she was furious. A man shows up to a blind date with kids wearing that? She forced a smile. "Hi, nice to meet you." They sat down. The kids asked for chocolate milk. Marcus ordered pancakes for dinner. Hannah just stared. He made small talk, asked about her work, her hobbies, but never once mentioned his. When she asked what he did, he just said, "I do a little bit of everything." No brand names, no expensive watch, not even a working phone. His screen was completely shattered. But he laughed with his kids like they were his whole world. He wiped syrup off their faces gently. He listened when they interrupted. He even offered to step outside when Micah started to cry over the wrong color cup. Hannah sat frozen. This was not what she expected. She had been set up with a man who clearly could not afford a babysitter. And when the check came, Marcus reached for his wallet, only to fumble through a few crumpled bills. Clearly not enough. I think I'm short. I can go to the car." "It's fine," Hannah said, grabbing her card. He looked at her for a long moment and simply nodded. "Thank you." As they got up, Maya dropped her stuffed rabbit in syrup. Hannah, without thinking, picked it up, wiped it clean with her napkin, and handed it back. Marcus froze for a moment and smiled, but said nothing. That night, as Hannah sat alone on the train ride home, still confused and frustrated, her phone buzzed. Text from her friend. "So, did he tell you who he really is?" Hannah replied, "Yeah, a broke single dad with twins." But then her friend wrote something that made her blood run cold. "Hannah, that's Marcus Westbrook, the tech billionaire. He's worth over $800 million. She gasped, reading the message again. She had just judged a man who was testing her the entire time. Hannah sat on her bed, staring at the glowing screen. Her friend's message repeated in her mind. That man is Marcus Westbrook, the billionaire tech CEO. And you thought he was broke. She felt sick. She remembered how he looked, his cracked phone, his beat-up hoodie, fumbling through small bills at dinner. How could a billionaire look like that? Unless it was a test. Her heart dropped. She remembered offering to pay the bill. She remembered wiping syrup off his daughter's stuffed toy without thinking. Had he been watching her that whole time, judging how she would treat him when she thought he had nothing? Suddenly, she remembered something else. That look in his eyes. When she helped his daughter, when she spoke gently to his son.
Not a casual glance, but a quiet, searching gaze, like a man who wanted to believe someone could care without motive. Just then, her phone buzzed again. "Marcus, thank you again for last night. If you're not too upset, I'd like to see you again. No tricks, just me." She stared at the screen for a full minute before replying. "Hannah, only if you promise to answer one question, truthfully." They met again the next evening. This time, no twins, no distractions, just Marcus, in that same plain hoodie, sitting outside a tiny bookstore cafe with 2 mugs of tea and a nervous smile. Hannah sat down slowly. "Let me get this straight. You're a billionaire. A real one, not a prank show." Marcus smiled, but his voice was quiet. "I am. And I am sorry I did not say it up front. I needed to see something before I told you." You blinked. "You needed to see what?" He looked at her with those same searching eyes. "If you would still treat me with kindness, even if you thought I was nobody." Hannah's breath caught in her throat. Marcus looked down for a moment, then spoke softly. "My wife died 5 years ago. Maya and Micah barely remember her. Since then, I have met a lot of women and lost trust in most of them. They smiled when they saw my car, they laughed louder when I said my name. But you, Hannah, you cleaned sticky syrup off a stuffed rabbit, you paid for pancakes without flinching, you treated me like I mattered even when you thought I had nothing." Silence fell. Hannah felt heat rise in her cheeks. Her throat tightened. It was not about money. It was about trust. About a man who had been burned too many times, and a woman who, without knowing it, had passed a test she didn't even know she was taking. Marcus leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. "I do not want someone who wants the billionaire. I want someone who sees the father, the man, the broken parts too." And for the first time in years, Hannah smiled not because she was impressed, but because she understood. As they walked together under the streetlight, Hannah joked, "So what car do you actually drive?" Marcus laughed. "Right now, a dented Corolla. The Ferrari stays parked. Most days, I prefer to blend in." But as they turned the corner, 2 sleek black SUVs pulled up slowly behind them. The doors opened, and Hannah's mouth dropped open as a well-dressed man stepped out and whispered, "Mr. Westbrook, the board is waiting for your response."
Hannah froze. The man in the tailored suit stood respectfully by the SUV, eyes locked on Marcus. "Mr. Westbrook, the board is awaiting your final decision. The merger cannot move forward without your signature." Marcus sighed and nodded, calm as ever. "Tell them I will send the documents tonight and not a second before." The man stepped back, bowed slightly, and disappeared into the SUV. Hannah stood there in stunned silence, her breath shallow. She turned to Marcus. "You really are him." Marcus finally looked her in the eyes, this time without hiding. "I never stopped being him," he said softly, "but I needed to know if I could also just be Marcus, the father, the man who misses his wife, the one who wants peace more than power." Hannah's breath back emotion. All this time, she thought she was judging him, but he was the one silently weighing every move she made. He gestured toward a nearby bench. "Sit with me." They sat in the quiet, the city humming in the distance. Hannah finally spoke. "Why me?" she asked. "You could be with anyone. Women would line up just to take a selfie with you." He chuckled, but his face was serious. "That is the problem. They line up for the wrong reasons." He looked down at his hands. "When you lose someone you love, when your children cry at night for a mother you cannot bring back, money becomes the least impressive thing you own." Hannah's chest tightened. She saw him differently now, not as a billionaire, but as a man who carried deep, invisible scars. Then he turned to her. "I watched you that night. Not just how you treated me,
but how you looked at my children. You did not know who I was, and still you bent down, wiped syrup off Maya's toy, and smiled at her like she mattered." His voice broke just a little. "I cannot teach someone to love my kids, but I can see when it comes naturally." Hannah's voice trembled. "I wasn't trying to impress you. That is exactly why you did." They sat quietly, and for a moment, it felt like time stopped. But then, Marcus's phone buzzed. He frowned. He stood and walked a few steps away, his back tensing. Hannah watched as he answered. His tone was low, almost icy. "No, that is not acceptable. I told you, family comes first." A pause. Then he said, firmly, "Reschedule the board meeting. I have somewhere more important to be." He hung up and turned back toward her. "Come with me," he said softly. "To where?" Marcus smiled. "To meet the two little people who already adore you." An hour later, Hannah stood in a glass-walled penthouse that overlooked the entire city skyline. The twins came running the second she stepped through the door. Micah," Marcus called gently. "This is Miss Hannah. Be nice." The twins wrapped around her legs like she had known them forever. And in that moment, surrounded by laughter, light, and the faint smell of cookies baking in the kitchen, Hannah realized she was standing in a world she never imagined she belonged in. But somehow she did, until a voice from the hallway cut through the air. Cold, stern, female. "Marcus, we need to talk now." A tall woman in pearls stood at the entrance, eyes narrowed at Hannah. The twins backed up instantly. Marcus's entire posture shifted, his jaw clenched. "Not now, mutter." Hannah stood frozen. The warmth of the twins' laughter vanished like smoke. The woman at the door stared at her with razor-sharp eyes, tall, impeccably dressed, cold. "So this is the woman you brought into my grandchildren's home?" she said, her voice dripping with judgment. Marcus stepped forward quickly. "Mother, stop. She is my guest." His mother looked Hannah up and down. "No wedding ring? No background? Probably Googled you the second she got home. What is it this time? Another woman who wants your money?" Hannah's throat tightened. Marcus turned to her, his voice calm but firm. "You do not have to stand here for this." But Hannah stood her ground. "It is okay. Let her speak." Marcus's mother stepped closer. "Let me be clear. I lost my daughter-in-law to cancer. I will not lose my son or my grandchildren to a woman playing pretend. You come from nothing, you bring nothing, and you will never fit into this world." The room fell completely silent. The twins were watching. Hannah looked at them, then back at the woman. And then, softly, but without trembling, she said, "You are wrong." The older woman raised her eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Hannah's voice shook at first, but she stood tall. "I may not come from money, but I come from love. I was raised by a single mother who cleaned houses, who gave everything she had so I could learn what real kindness looks like." She looked at Marcus now, eyes full of emotion. "And when I saw your son alone, tired, raising two little souls, I did not see a billionaire. I saw a father doing his best. I saw two children who needed to be seen, not bought." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. Hannah continued, voice steady now. "I do not need your last name. I do not need his bank account. I need to know that when Micah cries in the middle of the night, someone will be there. That Maya has someone who remembers the color of her favorite cup, and that Marcus never has to carry all this alone again." Silence. The twins slowly stepped forward and wrapped their arms around Hannah's waist. Maya whispered, "I want her to stay." Micah nodded. "She's nice, Grandma. She makes Daddy smile." Marcus's mother's face softened just slightly. Then Marcus finally stepped in, placing himself beside Hannah. "I already chose," he said quietly, "and I am not changing my mind."
His mother looked at them both, then exhaled, her voice quieter now. "If she hurts you, if she breaks those kids' hearts," he said, "she won't." Then came something no one expected. The older woman extended her hand. "Then I suppose we will see." Hannah shook it, not to impress her, but to show her she was not afraid. 6 months later, the same cafe, the same corner table. But this time, the twins wore matching flower girl dresses. Marcus straightened his tie nervously. "You sure about this?" Hannah smiled, brushing syrup off Maya's cheek. "I said yes the day you let me wipe that stuffed bunny." The twins laughed. The music started. The guests stood. And as Hannah walked down the aisle with 2 little hands in hers, she no longer felt like someone trying to fit in. She felt like someone who finally came home.